I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First thing on the agenda is the minutes. You guys read it?
I did.
Yes. Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, budget versus actual.
Scott, I'd like to request that we take something out of order. I've been meeting with members of the town office for the last week. And they've asked me to convey a message to the board. I'd like to do it now because one of the people has another engagement and has to get off in about half hour.
Time.
Probably don't have enough. Wait until. Okay, thank you for the opportunity of making this statement. I'm making the statement as an individual and also in conjunction with the messages that the other people, the town clerk, wanted to express, and that the deputy town clerk wanted to express, and Gloria Coach also helped craft this message as well. This letter is in response to Selectman Collins' public statements on May 10th, 2022 at a select board meeting. The response comes from a number of town employees, including the town clerk, the deputy town clerk, and the town administrator. It also reflects statements from other departments. It's our effort to ensure transparency in these dialogues. The most important issue for all of us who crafted this is that there was an allegation of illegal and unethical behavior in the town office that involved alleged efforts to alter an election. It was also stated by Selectman Collins that he had consulted with the New Hampshire Attorney General's office and legal counsel for the New Hampshire Municipal Association. He said that they agreed that the actions of the town officials were illegal and unethical. On the 12th of May, Town Administrator Sampson and Gloria Coach, Finance Director, called both of those offices to determine what those offices thought was going on in Canaan that was illegal or unethical. Both offices kept logs of all calls received. They keep logs of all calls received. Selectman Collins had not called NHMA at all in 2022, but had called the Attorney General's office in September of 21. His earlier call had nothing to do with the events that Selectman Collins described on May 10th of this year. Both offices told Selectman Collins that the acts he inquired about in 2021, that's 2021, not this year, were neither illegal nor unethical. So what act in 2022 prompted this great reveal of illegality and unethical behavior? After 19 years working with the town of Canaan, Vicki McAllister is trying to plan for retirement, which would occur in the middle of a term, because that's when her entire retirement period opens up. The role of town clerk, town tax collector, motor vehicle clerk is very specialized and complex. There are many laws that are always changing, as are the procedures to be followed as dictated by the state of New Hampshire. Vicki has been worried about how a transition would occur that would assure that there was competence in the town clerk's office. Recently, a couple of small towns very near to us experienced vacancies in the town clerk's office that were very disruptive and required others to come in from out of town and provide essential services. Vicki McAllister and Ann LaBrie, the deputy town clerk, attended a select board meeting to discuss possible transition plans. These plans would be implemented over the next 2 years. There is no fixed timeline other than when Vicki is eligible for retirement. No matter what occurs, there are laws that govern the situation. There are laws that govern all aspects of this situation. Every town clerk has to be elected by the voters. It is possible to elect someone that is popular but not competent. It has happened in other towns. In such cases, the elected clerk needs to hire an additional person who is competent. You have to be licensed, I believe in the case of motor vehicles in particular, to make sure that you are able to do the job. If a town clerk resigns or dies or is incapacitated, the deputy town clerk takes over automatically for 30 days. After that period, an interim clerk is appointed by the select board, and that person must stand for election at the next regular town meeting. So it doesn't last for, most of it lasts is like 11 months and 25 days. These transition processes are something that the select board, the clerk, the deputy clerk need to be and are aware of. There has been no effort to alter an election. There's been no effort to prevent an election. There have been efforts to encourage people to run. As recently as a few months ago, Selectman Collins encouraged people to get involved and run for office. Transition is critical when much of Canaan's management is looking to retire. If there's no transition, costly mistakes can result in hundreds of thousands of dollars in losses to the town. The conversation Selectman Collins referred to took place in a non-public session. Since personnel hiring, which includes appointments to positions, legal issues, potential litigation, and reputations were being discussed and was marked on the agenda. That's pursuant to RSA 91A3. RSA 91A3 is a state law that governs non-public sessions, and these topics are allowed. To be clear, there was a discussion about possible transition. There was no action taken by the select board, neither in the non-public session nor in the open session. There was no effort to alter an election or prevent the voters from selecting a town clerk. Similarly, Vicki McAllister and Ann LaBrie were only trying to look at transition plans in good faith. Finally, there were no statements by anyone in the NHMA or the Attorney General's office that stated anything about this event was illegal or unethical. Selectman Collins says that he wants transparency because he took an oath of office and he wants all the facts of this unethical behavior to come out. It's important to note that his oath of office requires him, under the law, to maintain confidentiality of all matters that are discussed in non-public sessions. And further, the release of that information is a clear violation of his oath and subject to judicial remedies pursuant to RSA 42:1A2A. This is an unethical act. Due to his action, no town employee will believe that they can speak in confidence to the Board of Selectmen in the future. That trust relationship has been seriously damaged. Selectman Collins raised another example of unethical or dishonest behavior about Town Administrator Sampson, indicating that he's resigning in December so that he can run for the Select Board in March of next year. This is not an accurate statement. Selectman Collins did approach Town Administrator Sampson prior to the 2022 town meeting and said he wanted Town Administrator Sampson to transfer the management of the town by May of this year to Municipal Resources Incorporated. And then the town would pay him for three additional months as a severance. Selectman Collins indicated that he wanted municipal resources to run the town starting in May of this year and continuing into 2023. At that point, the board would find a replacement town administrator. Town Administrator Sampson wanted to work through the 2022 budget cycle, which starts in August and concludes in December. This would allow for a final budget that reflects the select board goals, department needs, and results in an affordable tax rate. It would show the new incoming town administrator what process had been used during the last 12 years. Doesn't mean it couldn't be changed, it could. But at least there would be some indication of why it's done the way it is. During that same period, a tax rate is set in November for the 2022 tax year. Not understanding that process can result in severe underfunding of the budget, or in the alternative, overtaxing the public, because it is not an easy process to set a tax rate in the state of New Hampshire. The desired date of Administrator Sampson's resignation was totally unrelated to running for select board. There was a desire to offer guidance to a new administrator that may not have any prior experience in any of these areas. You would be extremely fortunate to come up with somebody who had prior town administrator experience. As part of Selectman Collins's expose regarding the conversations we had, he alleged that the town administrator Sampson stated he regretted working hard for the town of Canaan for 12 years. It's part of the statement. Town Administrator Sampson's full statement was he regretted working hard for Canaan for the last 12 years just to see the past improvements attacked by Selectman Collins. Selectman Collins saw another alleged example of unethical action in the selection of a budget committee replacement. The town advertised on the internet for replacement candidates for several weeks, if not months. There was a pleasant surprise of 3 candidates. 2 were known ahead of time, at least by myself and by other members of the budget committee, and both had prior experience on the budget committee. One was not widely known and was new to Canaan. There was some confusion about how to select the replacement out of the 3 candidates, but there was no illegal or unethical behavior in deciding who to elect. Left the word no out. So anybody's got a written copy, anybody's listening, there's a word no in there. There was no illegal or unethical behavior in deciding who to elect. The attendees openly stated their choice and a decision was reached. Other topics were mentioned by Selectman Collins on May 10th that were exaggerated to arouse the public, but were not accurate representations. These included, quote, serious discrepancies, unquote, at the transfer station, quote, huge hazardous waste stations, and a lack of support for employees. There are disagreements about all these issues. There are also issues of Selectman Collins operating without authority from the board that has resulted in the spread of misinformation, but these are all of lesser import. The allegations by Selectman Collins are an unwarranted attack on those of us who have served decades and care about our community and working together. For those of us who are here, who work here and live here, legality, ethical behavior, truth, transparency, and public service are our guideposts and have been for decades. That's all I have to say on behalf of people I mentioned. Thank you. I would ask that this be placed in the records in the minutes.
Amended with a no.
Yeah, as amended with a no.
All right. Budget versus action.
Okay, we've got a copy of the budget, and again this week, because I'm still getting the hang of how we do this. I wanted to pay attention to a couple of large items on the first page, which is Staples, not in the usual corner, but if you find page 1, you're all set. There is a yellow for those of you who got colored copies, and it says minus 13,073. So I did bring the detail on that. Somebody asked about that in the last couple of minutes. So I want to tell you what's included in that. First of all, there's about $4,500 for surveying at Cozy Corner that's included in that. So that brings it down to about $9,000. Rogers payments are in there for roughly something about $1,500. There's software costs in there for another $2,000. And the rest of it is advertising. So if you look at 3,500, 75, about eight, so it's about $5,000 in advertising for positions. And as you know, we're running a whole series of ads for positions. The other one is very similar to it. It depends on whether it's newspaper or not. The newspaper, excuse me, the next one is under, should be under general government. Yep, it is. It's on page 3. And it says advertising and notices, and that's what's in the newspapers. And that also is advertising for positions, not cheap. So it's 5,000. So if you look at the two, that is what we spent so far on advertising for positions. And we still have 2 other positions to go. Although it has been a combined position, that's transfer station and water and sewer. Most of the advertising at this point has been completed. So that I wanted to point out is where the major overruns are in the budget.
So we're at 13,000 for advertising total,
For what?
13,000 for advertising total,
Let me look at it again. I didn't keep track of the running number.
77 plus 5.
Yeah, it sounds about right. Yep. And majority of that was newspaper and, well, 40% of it was newspaper. The other 60% was the advertising online through Indeed primarily. There's some other advertising that was free, which we also did. And thanks to Canaan Neighbors Helping Neighbors for helping to push that. That was good. All right, other issues as we go through the budget. There aren't a whole lot that I want to comment on. Down under mechanic, Louis has asked, is Louis here?
What page?
Page 4. It's mechanic, MECH, that whole department. And there's pink there for those of you who are colored ones. Nobody has a colored one. I'm the only one. Okay, there's highlighting on the left side on the mechanic, and that's for the wages for the mechanic's position, which obviously we've now gone almost 5 months without filling, so we've saved 5 out of 12 months of payroll. And on the right-hand side, there's a lot more expense that came for repairs and repair parts in particular. And frankly, we're going to have cost overruns there this year because we are sending more things out for repair. So I've highlighted only to explain, and I explained it to Louis. Yeah, okay, you may go over on a particular line item, but that'll be offset by other savings in the budget. So just do what you need to do to repair the equipment. And that's not unusual. We've done that in the past. Heat in particular hasn't been allocated yet between departments, and there's some issues there in terms of which tanks they think they're filling. It's a perennial problem. It has to do with the drivers. There are 3 tanks behind this building that operate in 3 different buildings. And if they see a tank out back, they automatically assume it's one building. And so it's never billed correctly. Other than that, I'm going to go back to the last page, which would be page 8. And this is to show you, these are where the last page is like 6, 7, 8 are where water is, sewer is located there, and ambulance and library. And at the very bottom of that last page 8 is where I'm showing the ambulance and water and sewer accounts. In Canaan, those accounts are dedicated accounts. They're not part of the general fund. So on the ambulance side, we started the year with 82,000 in that account. That's typically where the money is kept for the capital reserves for the ambulance. It's currently up to 88,000, and we budgeted for the year 328,000. That's on the left. And so far we have raised a total of 75% of that, which is pretty good. So that that is primarily because the easiest money for us to collect is from the towns. Where we still need to show progress is going to be in special events and in fundraising, and on insurance, it looks like we're on track for insurance receipts for the year. Down on the bottom part of that section that says WNS, water and sewer. The fund balance at the start of the year was 121,000 roughly. Now 271,000. That's because of the money that went in there from ARPA for the 156,000 to be used on the water and sewer lines, water lines. The revenue that we budgeted for the year was 225,000. And so far we've gotten in a total of about 76,000, or roughly a third of the revenue. We really haven't seen the revenue come in yet from the last round of water and sewer bills. It should start coming in very soon, but the long and short of it is that both of those really don't show any problems at this point. And it shows ultimately between that 271,000 that's in the fund balance for water and sewer. In addition to that, we have another 204 coming in this summer, which will give us 400 and whatever it is, $475,000 towards the construction project. Part of the funds in there are 25,000 that we have from the state revolving fund loan fund. So that is included in there. We are authorized to draw down up to 550. We hope not to have to do that because of additional ARPA money that's supposed to be coming in this summer as well. That was money that were awarded, not ARPA. Additional money from the congressionally designated appropriation the Shaheen's office put through for the town of Canaan. So that is another $1 million.
1.47.
I'm sorry.
1.47.
You sure?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. So anyway, so that's the additional money that's coming through. That's it on the budget versus actual. Unless anybody's got any questions about anything else.
I have a question.
Yep.
It doesn't look like the price of heating oil or especially diesel fuel is going down anytime soon. And looking at the budget, we're only a third of the way through the year, and it looks like we're more than that for both of those lines. So where are we gonna get the money to pay for fuel oil and heating oil, the motor oil, motor fuel and heating fuel for the rest of the year? Lines that we could take stuff from?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I mean, that's what we typically do when an unexpected expense occurs.
We
We
don't
find,
have contracts on any of those things.
I'm sorry,
Do we have contracts on any of those?
we have a
things?
state contract on diesel fuel.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
We're not using it currently, but at the point when it does make sense to use it, we can switch over and use the state contract on diesel.
So do we have a cap on what we pay for diesel then?
No, we don't. The only thing we have caps on for fuel or for heating fuel,
Okay.
not for vehicle fuel.
Okay.
On heating fuel, we have a cap through until October. That's Irving. Okay, and that actually is doing pretty well.
Yeah. Well,
I was told today that the diesel prices are through the roof.
$6
I mean,
a
fuel and propane prices are pretty much. No, fuel oil, number two, fuel oil is pretty much right next to it.
Right.
We have a
Well,
locked in number for heating oil. We have a locked in number for propane. We do not have a locked in number for diesel, but we have the state contract. And we do not have a locked in for gas, same type of thing. We can't take a state contract.
Well, with the heating oil, it's not as big a deal because most of the cold weather that was budgeted for is already gone. So by the time we need a lot in the heating oil, it will be budget year anyway.
And hopefully it won't go another 100%
But
above
we
what
have a
it is.
lot for highway vehicles. A lot of them used to be that some of our highway vehicles were smaller and they took the gasoline. Now,
On the highway fuels, on the diesel,
now more than our diesel than gas. So,
well, the biggest problem that we have, well, the fuels for the trucks are the biggest problem we have without protection. On the heating oil, we have a protection through October. But then after that, all bets are off and we got to go out to bid again.
it's not gonna make much difference on that.
Any other questions about the budget?
I guess I have one, back up
to the advertisement? Where, I know you're advertising in the Valley News, where else are you advertising that I'm missing? Besides that neighbors deal on.
We advertise on Mascoma Valley listserv. We advertise on Upper Valley listserv. We don't advertise. We post notices. They're free.
Okay, yeah,
Well, there's a site, if you go to Vermont, New Hampshire, Upper Valley, there's 2 associated sites that are want ad sites, and we advertise on those, and we don't pay for those either. We advertise on our flash email. I don't think, did we do anything with Grafton's?
One.
Yeah, we advertised the first round of jobs on Grafton's Facebook page. So all of those are free.
right.
What is not free is Indeed,
Excuse me?
is a social media, it's not social media, it's a computerized placement service for employment called Indeed, INDEED. Indeed has been around for, I don't know, at least 10 or 12 years. It's tied to LinkedIn, if you've ever heard about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where people post things about their careers and all that. We used it at least twice in the past for employment because it has greater outreach. It's just more people use it. We in the past also used 3 other services, which we never got much return on. Monster was one. We never got any real return on that. ZipRecruiter, never got any real return on that. But Indeed, we've gotten return. So before the meeting, people were talking about numbers of applications that are current in the system. And I think if you counted all the ones that we've gotten in, there's probably 10 that came in by paper and probably 80 for all the positions we got that came in from Indeed. And later tonight, we're going to interview 2 candidates who are live candidates that put in applications.
We also use the municipal resource.
Oh, yeah, we also use New Hampshire Municipal Association, and we use the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, so we advertise on
So
them
do
as
you
well.
do that like monthly or weekly, or how do you?
Okay, so in the newspapers, we do it 3 times a week or 4 times a week. It's a package deal that we work with them. Always includes a Saturday, Sunday, because
Yeah.
Sundays are popular for want ads. So we do that type of advertising in the newspapers. Indeed, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's been running now for 2 months. Okay, so it's going on all the time. On the social media stuff, it was like 1 every 2 weeks, we'd put out another blast on the social media.
That's not a cost.
That's not a cost. Indeed is a constant cost.
Really.
So if we get in an application, do we feel meets criteria, we pay for it. So it's anywhere from $40 to $70 for that application. It's a finder service for all intents and purposes.
Okay, forget it. Yep.
And as an example, I don't do the police. The police are done by Sam, okay? I don't do the town administrator. Those are done by Gloria and by the board. I do the mechanic, and I do the ones for the highway department. So those are ones that I'm familiar with. And as an example, one came through today. It came from Virginia. And I don't want to go into any details about it, but as it turns out that the person who was applying for the job from Virginia grew up in Canaan.
Really.
They wanted to come back to Canaan. All right.
Maybe it was-
That person never would have seen this any other way other than they were watching about Canaan and wanted to come back and saw that and apply. That is not unusual. On all the mechanic positions, we had people apply all the way up through pretty much almost to the Canadian border and down into Massachusetts.
Those are the ones that are expensive. That's where this.
Indeed is where most of it is. I mean, I can,
Okay, I just wondered what is so, what ones are so costly, because $13,000.
we have part of that is on ZipRecruiter. We still use ZipRecruiter, but nowhere near as much as the LinkedIn stuff, the Indeed. So
This is expensive.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was just remembering. Valley News is pretty expensive too.
Yeah, Valley News is expensive as hell.
Yeah.
We used to use the Union Leader, but it wasn't any good for us. We never really got anything out of the Union Leader. I will say that we have applicants, so that's good. Are they perfect applicants? No.
I wish we did.
But I think as of tonight, I think I think it's up to like 6 possibles for the mechanics position. 2 that the board really hasn't heard anything about yet, but 4 that were possible the other night.
Yeah,
Okay, so
okay.
that's what the cost is.
Thank you.
Ellie has a question.
Yeah, I just looked at the water and sewer, and I'm still trying to figure out, I'm like, just not looking at the right places, like going back to both heating oil and the, motor fuels, I'm trying to figure out where in water and sewer those 2 items are, there's operating fuel under,
That's I believe that's propane.
so that's the heat, that would be the heat one, right? You don't run the pump truck on propane, do you?
No, I mean, pump truck fuel is, you can take it out of my lunch budget for 2 weeks.
All right, so where would you put it?
Not in my lunch budget.
Well,
Um,
what line is it in?
I don't believe, where does that get built? Do you know?
30 years old and 5,400 miles.
John, where does the truck?
Oh, it's actually, it's in, I don't have it in front of me. It's in there.
Yeah, you got the budget. So where in your budget lines does that appear?
It's operating, they put it in operating fields.
Okay.
It goes in there too?
Yeah,
Okay, so gasoline, so does it run on diesel or does it run? on
that
gas?
runs on gas.
Gasoline, okay.
It has
that's good.
5,441 miles and it's
Okay.
32 years old.
Okay,
Do the
all right.
math.
All right, then that takes us to, so do you have a truck for water too?
No, that's the truck. Well, yeah,
Oh,
there's a
that's-
pickup truck.
He's got 2 vehicles, he's got the pump truck and then he's got his own little.
Yeah, there's John's pickup truck.
Well, that's the other thing, 'cause I don't know where that is in here, but under water treatment, there is propane, so again, that's to heat the water plant?
Yeah, that's up at Fernwood Farm.
Right, yeah, okay, because they switched that over, I think, from electricity, but I still don't see anything in there for the, I would think that the truck we drive back and forth to work, we probably have more than 5,400 miles on it, and I don't see anything in here for gasoline, for that.
I'd have to talk to Gloria about it. I'm pretty sure it's an operating fuels.
I think it stays on highway.
Yeah, because I know that some of those things need to be allocated from highway, but if we're gonna ask the water and sewer to pay for the cost, then I think we should be making sure that we do a better job of allocating.
You can raise that in the budget committee. I haven't changed that policy. It's been the same policy since before I was here.
Well, I don't think it's fair to put that on the taxpayers, even though I'm a water user. I don't think it's fair to make the taxpayers pay for John's truck when it's only used for water and sewer. So everybody that wants to make an amendment to the budget next year, think about that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anything online?
No. Thank you for asking.
Cozy Corner proposals.
Okay, we were open to receive proposals through 4 o'clock. And we've received 1 proposal, which you have in front of you. And the action is up to the Board of Selectmen, what they would like to do. I checked to see if it met the underlying criteria that I had, which was had to be at least 150,000, it's 150,000. So then the rest of the discussion was, and I don't think you ought to at least look at it for a week before you make any decisions. So the next step would be to evaluate whether the plans are consistent with trying to make the village better. If the answer is yes, then it's up to you to decide whether you're going to award that. That is the price that, again, to repeat what Doreen Wyman told me. She said, if you can get somebody to give you the 150, snap it up, don't list it. So there you go. You got somebody to give you 150, but you got to go through and evaluate the proposal. But that's the only one we have.
And so all proposals now is closed.
Yeah. And we did advertise that several times online.
All right, next thing is water project. John?
I have a couple things for you guys to sign, is that right?
We'll see.
All right. That's the completed contract with the bond and everything attached to it. That's signed and attested to
This is for,
for the contract with Kingsbury. And that includes the bond and everything that goes along with it.
we already voted on it. Right?
Yeah, we've already voted, it's just a sign. I have to
So
get
is
to
it
this.
just my signature? on
Yeah,
this?
yeah, and it's.
Right.
Right there, owner, yeah, and then when do you have to test it? You want it signed and, yeah. Take both copies.
It's back on the back table, 2 spreadsheets and a business plan.
Okay,
And you just need to sign it.
okay.
You want to move test vote or you want to handle test vote?
I did, what is at the end of this one? This is the contract with Verizon.
So the contract with Horizons, is this the contract with
exactly,
Horizon?
yeah.
And what is the date on it?
Is, I think it's the 22nd of April.
Well, I'm trying to,
Yeah.
look, just to make it clear,
No,
for
no.
the 4th time.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of this paperwork.
That's,
I have this contract, which I received 2 weeks ago. This is our
That's
first
exact-
meeting we've had. So I need to get it signed. I'd like to make sure that this is the contract we're talking about.
I'll give it right
Because
away.
I haven't seen one thing that's gone on that table.
All right, I'm gonna give it.
No, you're not. You're never gonna give it to me, but I'm gonna keep repeating it. I've never seen the paperwork.
Mike gave it to me to have the sign. So, you know.
You want a lack of accountability?
Oh, I see. He came to me. That's the thing.
This is a perfect attitude to have, like
Well, all right.
professional as the day is long. Really holds to your statement. So keep on going.
Good.
So do I sign that right there?
Yeah, just like that.
Maybe I should just be quiet and let you perform like you do in the office. And maybe everybody would actually see it instead of only me.
I'm sorry, Dan, but you
Don't
know,
be sorry, don't be sorry to John. You're the one who just,
no, I'm not sorry, John.
I just don't- doesn't surprise me at all.
We've, our wetlands permit's been approved.
Okay.
By the state, so all the paperwork's gonna come back to us. It was approved last week, Mike, I guess, contacted them and they got back to them and have been approved. So we're all set on that. The contract is there. And then the contract with Horizons is there. So basically, it's a notice to proceed as they go to the state. And they put it on the record, it's part and parcel with the state, goes in the file.
Well, last time you were in, you talked to us about a pipe shipment. Is that still on?
The pipe shipment says it should be here mid-July. That's what we're hoping. That's why we ordered it ahead. Otherwise, we'd be in November. We ordered it today, we'd be November, December, and you don't want to be out in that lake in November, December.
Yeah. I appreciate your efforts on it, John.
What else you got, Tom?
I should have in your packet from me, the grant pre-app.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm looking to get approval to apply for the pre-app for this year's SRF. And you can see the addition on the bottom. There's a sheet on the bottom. An information sheet from the state. It's right there exactly. What we're looking to do is that we've got the money from our earmark from Shaheen's office to remove all the leaded pipes. But we never included the services. And what the EPA is gonna force us now is to take all those leaded services out. And right now, 80% of the town doesn't have leaded services at all. But 20% does, where all the old pipe was left. What they did is they ran out of money and they kept certain parts. The 3 parts that they kept are Waynesfield to Highland, Depot Street to School Street, and Bruce Road all the way to the end. So Bruce Road to the north end towards Dollar General.
Yeah.
Basically, and that's a funky section of pipe that goes from 8 inch to 6 inch to 4 inch to 2 inch, all in that small section. And that's all leaded in there. So that all these services will need to be replaced on all those old pipes. And the EPA is forcing us to do that. So we can apply for a grant now, or we can wait and do it in 2 years with our own money. So we're talking in terms of anywhere from $700,000 to $800,000. So I mean, on top of what we're doing now, if we put that debt on what I'm doing now, it's just refresh.
say roughly 800,000.
800,000, it's just a rough number. The
How much
unique
is
thing
available?
about this grant through ARPA is that it's 100% grant. Based upon that we're considered disadvantaged in a small town, which we fall into both of them. The MHI hadn't been updated in Canaan, but it was updated for the state. So instead of being above the MHI, we're below it. But just for a very particular area, I think it'll probably by the fall, we'll change it and we'll go above it again. So with, you know, it's
Pretty time sensitive.
it's time sensitive and time frame.
And who's doing all the work?
With construction work or application work?
The work on replacing the lead pipe.
That would be, we'd have to get a different contractor to do it. We'd have a, basically, we'd have to put that out to bid. That would go out in 23. So they, when we do the engineering, everything that goes along with it, gets approved from the state.
Mhm.
And that would go out in 23. And then this would be done right along at the same time. So while we're replacing that pipe, we put all brand new services in. And then when I say services, this includes all the way to the house, which is unique.
Right,
Usually when they replace it, they only replace on the curb stop.
and that could eliminate some of the problems we have with water freezing and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing,
Ultimately-
and breakage and everything else. You'll have brand new services from that pipe.
So would those users that have lead service to the house have to pick up any of that cost?
No, that would, this grant includes the cost right to the house, but it legally, if you're in a
Gray area,
gray area.
because from the valve is usually.
Exactly, yeah, and you're on their property. I mean, I'm on their property to the curb stop. But that's part of our agreement.
Mhm.
Like anywhere from the curb stop to the house, we're in a gray
We
area.
have an easement there.
We don't, that's the hard thing. Yeah, so I
We're
mean,
responsible for maintaining it and repairing it, but
not, they're
Only to the
responsible for the
valve.
curb in. Yeah, so I mean, it's in a gray area, but the EPA is requiring us to do it.
Okay.
And it's kind of a funny thing because it's all based on the pipe that comes into the house. So if the pipe is in copper or plastic, we have to replace it, even if it's leaded or not, it's automatic. And that's the way it works. We are the first to look at this. I talked to the state last week and I talked to the state today. We are the first to look at this program because we basically know where our issues are.
yeah, we're in the middle of our water project. So it's
Exactly,
kind of
so,
gives us an
but-
advantage in a
It
way.
gives us an advantage that we'll be able to get the work done all at once.
So do you have more details somewhere than this?
That's all I have. That's, the state hasn't, I mean, literally, this came out 2 days ago,
All right,
3 days ago.
so,
And you can see it,
With
it's written right in the bottom of it. If you read into it, it's written right into it. This is something they literally came out with.
so you need a decision by when?
I need a decision before June 1st, so you guys can send and think about it. So,
I have a question, for John.
Yep.
Because I heard you mention Highland Avenue, but I didn't hear the parts before. You said from something to Highland Avenue, and I heard the rest of it, but when you said Highland Avenue, was that from?
from Williams Field,
Okay, so that includes my house.
yeah, because what they did was, there's a 4-inch pipe that goes from where the hydrant is at Williams
Yeah, it
Field.
goes over through the river.
Yeah, it goes over through the river and it goes up literally right on the other side of your lawn.
All right, well, you fix the sinkhole.
Oh, no, that's a state. I talked to the state about that. That's,
What are the requirements from us? Do you know?
just approved to do it. See, it's just it's a pre-application. And the way it works is you get the pre-application, then it gets ranked. It's like the state looks at it and they mark it. They say, no, this is worth 10 points, that's worth 4 points, that's worth 6 points. And it comes to a final number and they rank it and on their list. So like the top 20 that are on the list, they fund automatically.
Okay.
And in this case, it's full grant because of the way they designed it.
So how do they know who needs to have their lead pipe replaced and how do they know?
The
everything's been done?
EPA is telling them what to do.
No, I know that, but
Yeah.
I mean, do they know the addresses? I mean.
Yeah, actually, they do. We're
They do?
free to do this,
Yeah.
because what the deal is we have to identify all the old services in
Okay.
town. That has to be done before the end of, 2024.
So what happens if one person says, I don't want you in my house?
Well, this is the thing that's from the legal end of it, it's an interesting, we do to the curb stop and that's it. We have to get an agreement with the homeowner to actually physically come in their house.
I can't imagine they wouldn't want it fixed, but
Right,
you never know.
never know, but we should sign, I mean, maybe we think about.
We'd have to do it,
having a
it would
waiver
go
form.
from homeowner to homeowner. And there's other ways that we can do it. In the case of the copper or the case of the galvanized, you literally can pull it out and then have the plastic or copper line chase it. That's what they've been doing. So they literally pull
So
it
they're
right
not digging
from
up
it.
the entire yard.
Exactly. Yeah, so you can, and it gets interesting with plastic because you don't want to stretch it out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hard thing about it. So.
Does this have any chance of impacting anything else we've gotten already, or?
The way, in '89, they replaced 80% of the town. And they ran out of money. They ran out of money at Bruce Road. And
That was the branch line.
exactly,
Yeah.
they ran out of money for the branch line, so that they basically took that money and used it in other places. And they left certain parts of the pipe, so we know where our issues are. Because all that new ductile pipe is all brand new with all copper services.
Okay.
Everything was updated. It was just in those areas where they left the old lines that there's major issues. And they're gonna force us to do it anyway. I mean, this is by 26, they're gonna come to us and say, you have a year or 2 years to do this.
That's what I have to put in my draft.
How long are we able to, say this went through and we got the grant? How long can we sit on that money before they require us to have?
They'd have to set the,
They're yet to set.
till
the time frame.
26 is the date. That's the date that they're given now.
Okay,
So then, but nobody else.
26
applied.
of what, John?
What's that?
26 of what?
No, the 2026.
Oh, 20, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize. I got talking years and months and that. Yeah.
So this is a pre-grant application. which
Exactly.
Doesn't necessarily mean we
It's
get it.
no obligation, no nothing.
Okay, doesn't mean we get it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll let you know by June 1st.
Can I weigh
Go
in?
ahead.
Yeah, so first of all, isn't this the state revolving fund?
Yes, that's all right.
So it's not a grant application. You can
It-
put into the SRF application. I quote what it says here, cost for LSL and EC projects must be identified in the pre-application, but the pre-application is the state revolving fund, which is a loan.
But they.
Okay, I'm in favor of doing this, don't get me wrong,
But the
but
thing is-
don't tell them it's a grant until it becomes a grant.
I'll point this out. It is to the SRF, which is a loan program. But the thing is that this particular portion of it is a grant.
So as long as I'm being the Grinch, let me be the
Oh, no,
Grinch.
no,
a
no,
little
that's
bit
fine.
further.
Read it.
So really what'll happen is, and it won't happen anytime in the near future, it's gonna happen maybe in 8 months or 10 months. You're gonna get ranked for a loan, okay? Remember from this year, as we found out, because I never knew this until this year, that if you get the loan, you have to draw down the loan within how many months, 3 months or something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're gonna have to draw down this loan. Make sure before you walk off that cliff, and I agree that, you gotta do it sooner or later, and you wanna maximize the funds as much as you can. But make sure you know what you're buying, because if you don't get the grant and you go out and borrow $800,000 it's gonna have to be paid back, and that's more than what we
Yeah,
had talked
exactly.
about for the
Yeah.
first round, never mind this.
Yeah.
So just be careful. I'm sure that this is gonna happen after I'm gone, but please be careful when you look at it. Because the SRF, whenever you see state revolving fund, that is a loan. And I agree that we ought to try to go after the grants. I agree we ought to get the loan application in. We've applied for like this 5 times in the last umpteen years, and the best we ever got out of them was a loan for part of the cost, and we had to go out and find the rest of it. Okay, I understand that the money's in the budget for the ARPA money's in for this other piece of it, and it's for lead. The money we got from Shaheen's office is also for lead, but lead in the lines, not in the service lines. It's on the main lines. So it's a good fit as long as it's a grant. But you gotta keep watching it to make sure you don't end up owing 850,000.
I have a question. Does that grant or the money include money for the reseeding or landscaping that would happen if you're
That
on?
would include everything.
Usually that's part of the.
As
construction.
part of this, Horizons had already done a project like this similar down in Litchfield in Derry. what the deal was the St. Cobain, what you've all read about. They had to replace all the services into the house. So Verizon did this for almost the exact same number. And I think it was 42 versus 38. And their number was right. I mean, I did an estimate and their number was within 10% of mine. Which is real critical.
I am curious, John. How come we didn't know the number of services 2 months ago and now we do? What did we
Because
do?
I went and counted the services on the older pipe.
And you know that? I mean,
Yeah,
is
well,
that
it's-
accurate?
we know that all the services on the older pipe are all galvanized.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
What else?
Can we
Okay.
get a budget from Horizon?
Yes, I did, matter of fact, yeah.
Where?
So I don't have it with me right now, but I use that budget that they used in Litchfield and Derry.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get a unit cost per service. That's how we'll get the money. I mean, we use what, on the number of services we do. If we don't use it all, we'd have to give it back as part of the grant.
Just to be clear, I've always supported you on going after these funds, right?
No, you have, that's.
I just like to know more about it.
You always
All
have.
right. Anything else?
Oh, that's, do you have any more questions or?
No. I don't.
Yeah.
I appreciate your effort on it, John. Thank you.
Oh, it's been, but we talked to the state hasn't talked to anybody about this. This is a program that's 2 years ahead of what we're doing. So if we're already out there doing the work, it would help us to get us, see what money we can obtain. It, like Mike said, it is an SRF program. And it's based on, they send you an offer. And it says the amount of grant, the amount of loan. And in this case, if we fall under the parameters, it's supposed to be all grant money, it's supposed to be. That, that may not work out.
Well, when we see an agreement that says that. it'd be
Yeah,
great.
exactly, yeah, that's the.
So John, the other question I had, sorry, was, could this impact anything else we've been getting already that's already been promised us?
No, it won't, because I talked to Mike about that, and we were real particular about it. We pulled the application back from Shaheen, because I know the state's gonna go look at the same application.
Yeah.
And we specifically said it was for leaded jointed pipe, did not include any of the service work. Mind you, if you read into it, we'd have to update some of the services coming from the old pipe.
Good.
I mean, they're gonna come back on as that, and, but the rest of it, I mean, we did not save the service.
Yeah, and the reason was we just didn't know what it was back then. So we focused on the main line and that was easy to calculate. And what he's talking about, we need to do.
I understand.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna be forced to do it anyway in 26. I know I won't probably be here for it, somebody else will be here for it. And then $800,000 or $900,000 and we just won't be able to afford. Because they're gonna run, at some point, they're gonna run out of the ARPA money. They think it's a lot of money, but in this case, it's gonna go quick.
Yeah.
Once people start figuring out what it's for.
All right, John, thanks.
Do you want to talk some about trucks?
No, we got them later on.
Yeah, he's got me later on in the.
So right now, the
Pull up that
ambulance
file, yeah.
business plan.
You want to do an intro? I'll talk about the money piece, but
Sure. So do you guys, I'm assuming you guys have looked over it and have a chance to.
no, this is the first time. I think they've seen it.
We got it.
Is
Oh.
it the right one, right?
I've reviewed it.
Sorry, yeah.
Is it the right one?
Yeah, either one's okay.
Does anybody have any questions before I want to spiel? So John and I have felt pretty strong about this for a while. It's a need, not only for potential revenue, but for our townspeople and surrounding areas. Hospitals are being flooded with needing transfers. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into the hospital and they've been like, hey, can you take a patient from the APD? And that's just not something we're licensed to do. This does have potential for us to have quite a bit of revenue for it. John and I went through, did this business plan, took us a long time to put it together. We called DART, which manages all of the patient transfers. I spoke to surrounding agencies that were willing to give the information. I spoke to our billing company to see if that's something that they would support us in, which is a definite must, that they would do. So pretty much what we're proposing is that we can be licensed to start a transfer service. And for those of you that don't really understand what that is, we're licensed to do 911 calls, but we're not licensed at this point with the state to do interfacility transfers or back and forth, which means like we can bring somebody to the hospital, wait for them and then come back, or lower level care to higher level of care, higher level of care to home, multiple options. This is something I tend to tread lightly saying, but it is a pretty much without a doubt, you're getting income no matter what. So we can either accept the transfer or we don't have to take it. So what I got from a different agency was they have a step process that you go through and they figure out like if they have Medicare, Medicaid, that's something that we would get a contract with and we automatically get money for. And then if it's somebody, I need to transport Dan Collins to the hospital and back, he has the option to pay right then and there, which is also something that I verified with the billing company. And you'll see that it will come with like a little bit of an expense if people run their credit cards at like 3.5%, I think is the last number that we got, but that is it goes through the TD Bank, the e-services, and it goes right into our account. The numbers that I have in here on my sheet, might ran different numbers, just to see like if we, even if we did like a very low ball number, that this would still work, and I'll let you talk about that. But the rates that I have plugged in are based off of our 911 rates that we have now. The 911 call rates that we have, normally the other agencies have just made those rates the same as the transfer rates. So that's kind of like what we were basing it off of, if this is what we choose to do. They pretty much guarantee, excuse me, Dartmouth would guarantee us a day, which means that you could get calls or you could not get calls. So there's always that. We are going to need to hire more people set to do this, and we understand that's an expense to do so, but in return we'll have a pretty good revenue, which I will let Mike elaborate on a little bit as well. The other thing I just wanted to elaborate on is that I do a lot of I do all the prepping for the billing for the 911 calls, and it's going great for me now. We do have close to a 50% increase from last year. So my concern is that we start doing this, I'm not gonna be able to get all of that done myself. So to get somebody in here we set a max of 15 hours a week, which would also allow for that part-time range if it won't go over 20 hours if there's a busier week. That way we don't have to offer any insurance or anything like that to them.
And that's the breakdown this year, right?
The billing specialist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
budget impact for the.
Yes, yep.
So that's on the bottom.
So, what's your travel distance?
So it could go anywhere. My first one, I also work for Springfield Fire Department. I do transfers with them. My very first one was from Dartmouth to Jack Burns, which is 0.2 miles. You're not getting the mileage perhaps on that one, which we would charge. Our charge for 911 is $23 per hour, but you would get the BLS rate charge is what we would charge out.
So do you go to Boston? Do you go to Maine? Do you?
I personally have been from Dartmouth to Keene, Dartmouth to Boston. There's a lot of different, sometimes you're just going for very short distances, but.
And so do we have the option of saying yes or no if they ask
Absolutely.
us? So we could kind of feasibly put a distance where we're
Yeah.
not traveling outside of a certain.
Yeah,
distance.
and I put that in there too, like within like a normal limit within New
yeah,
England, like
we're-
our surrounding areas, kind of. I wouldn't be opposed to sending somebody from like Dartmouth to down to Boston or something if we had a crew, but if we didn't, and that's something we don't want to do, we can say no.
Right.
And they just go on a call line and they just keep calling the next
So is
person.
it 2 people every time you go out?
It is 2 people, yep, 2 licensed providers.
We're not gonna go down south or out west or anything like that. We're gonna keep it right.
No, but the reason I'm asking is because like in my own business, I have to be licensed and insured in
Right.
another state to go over and do work over there. So.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Does that affect you as well?
it's based off of the starting facility. So if I pick up in New Hampshire, then you have to have a
Yeah.
New Hampshire license, but you can bring to that outside
Okay.
agency. We would have our providers do
Yeah.
New Hampshire and Vermont licenses for that purpose. So if we pick up at Mount Scottney or something.
And I assume since it's not like an emergency situation, there's no soft billing, you get paid no matter what.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. there's like the Medicare, Medicaid contract, which I think they'll pay a certain percentage, but it's a dedicated percentage of that based off the contract, which I would have to look into, but still money.
And the amount of people you're looking to hire is 2?
We would like to do at least 2, that way we have 2 dedicated people and then start off slow and do like a couple days a week. We said 2 8-hour shifts a week, so let's say we pick Monday and Wednesday, they would be on the 8 hours per day, but that will give us a little bit of leeway if a call goes over. We're not putting ourselves in predicament where they're constantly over 20 hours and have to offer them the insurance and benefits.
So the people you'd hire would be just doing the transfers, you wouldn't be using your own people for transfer?
We could use our own
Current
people, but we would like really have to watch hours. If they have like 12 hours of 911 calls, and they're only have 8 hours available, so we don't go over the 20, have to offer benefits. So
How often is our current ambulance numbers being maxed out, so we're all 3 are being used right now? How often is that?
Minimal.
Yeah, it's
The
not-
only like circumstance I can think of is we have an event coming up, there's 2 events, so we have one available 911 truck, but that's on the weekends and we don't want to do events on, we don't want to do transfers on the weekends.
So, I mean, so what happens if you had 2 out and we had a 911 call in town?
We would refuse the transfer.
So what happens now if all 3 are being used for 911 calls anyways, and do
Then
mutually pulls in, or?
mutual aid, but we wouldn't do mutual aid for transfers. We would, my priority and his, we agree is that 911 calls, absolutely, and then we could use that crew as well for backup 911.
Is there a premium for weekend transfers as opposed to during the week? No, okay.
No. The only other thing I do want to say too is that prior to us going municipal in 2019, one of those ambulances was purchased for this.
Right.
So
That's
that's
why
an
we have
expense we don't
3.
have to worry about. And truly, we've gone up 49% in calls since last year to this date. And it's a very rare occasion that all 3 trucks are being used. So I think it's a phenomenal idea to put that towards transfers and
Okay.
everybody's money that
Is
did
that-
pay for that.
That was part of the original business.
Yes, it
Yes, it
was.
was.
What about other equipment? I'm sorry, Jim.
No, it's okay.
What about other equipment besides just the truck?
We have it all.
We have it.
Actually, the state requires less amount of equipment for transfers than it does 911, so it's equipped for 911 and has more than what it needs.
And that vehicle was on the warrant article several
Mhm.
years ago to be purchased for transfer.
Yes,
So the townspeople as a whole voted in approval
Yeah.
of this.
that's
Mhm.
correct. Yep.
Right.
Self-included, so.
When did we do that?
Not the ambulance, but because that was bought through
Through
Canaan
the
Fast.
but the transfer service.
The transfer.
That's what the whole
service
plan
use
was.
that.
Yes.
That's
use
why
the
that,
truck.
yeah.
Yep.
So back to money, you said, is it actually cash and carry? I mean, is it when you, if they don't have insurance and they actually have to pull their credit card out or pay you
Yes.
cash?
Yeah.
There's no billing or anything like that? No,
There is billing for sure, but the,
if it's covered by insurance?
yeah, we do not do any hard billing, so if they don't want to pay, we're not gonna go after them,
Transfer,
and that's the
right.
story. So we want to make sure that we get that money and not.
Okay.
bring us
Jordan,
predicament.
Is, just to be clear,
Yep,
correct me if I'm wrong, but in this process, Steve, did they call and say, hey, we need to transfer? The ambulance person goes, okay, where's it to, whatever, blah, 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 and then they figure it out, and they tell them, all right, this is how much I need, and they confirm it and get it agreed upon and paid before we go get them. Is that correct? So there's no down the road billing, like, all right, we'll come get you, and then you pay later. This
Okay.
is, you pay before we come get you,
and that's where I think
or
it's
if they don't pay, we don't go get them.
Right.
That's where I think it's beneficial too, because if Alton and I being the 911 crew out, I'm not gonna be able to answer that phone, go through all that approval. It'd be nice to have that person there so that we do get the revenue and,
I see, right, so the person here
yeah,
accepts the call, agrees, accepts form of payment at that time, then dispatches.
There's a list that they'll have to go through and questions that they'll have to ask.
Okay.
So ideally, and this is just, are long runs better than short runs, or is there any difference, or is it?
money wise, because we would get, what we're planning would be $23 per mile, so it's loaded miles. So if we travel all the way down to Ascuni, for example, we're not gonna get that trip there, but we get the 23 per mile wherever the destination is, loaded mile.
Okay.
Plus the rate of what whether it's ALS, BLS, non-emergent, emergent, go from there.
Oh, okay.
All right, Mike, did you want to talk about the financials?
Yeah, I'll keep it fairly short. First of all, the original business plan for this had nothing to do with the town. It started with Jimmy and Carol
Carol, yeah.
as the way to pay for the addition we're in. So
Yep.
that was designed to be transport of patients, private transport.
Yep.
And it never happened for a variety of reasons, but with a look at it again, there's feeling that it ought to happen, and I concur. I think it's a great way of making sure that the budget gets balanced. I did ask them to do two things. One was I wanted to see what a pro forma looked like in terms of income and expense. That really isn't in the documents that they gave you. It is in the two spreadsheets that I've given you. So I'll walk through it very quickly. So in an income and expense, what it does is it takes, if it's done correctly, you do it as a sensitivity analysis. And I'm going to demonstrate that in a second. But the sensitivity analysis is to say, what's your risk when you start this? And what happens if it goes south? And what's the likelihood it's going to go south? And what's going to get stranded? Because as long as you don't have much risk, it's certainly worth doing it. So the bottom, and you have two different sheets. The part that's in the green on the ones you got are the ones that are different between the two sheets. So on one, there's a trip fee of 604, and the other one is it starts at 604, 884, and those match up with what Jordan's got in her documents. Okay, that includes the travel rates and all the rest. I did ask for two things, which they provided for me, and it was great. The first one is some type of a statement from Hitchcock saying, how does the system work, and what, we're going to get enough calls. Okay, so that was the first issue. The second issue is how much money we're going to get. What does it look like? Those are the two variables where we have risk. And the amount of the risk is down at the bottom. And this number is wrong. It says there's the very lowest numbers on the sheet says it's 32. It's not 32. It's more like 17. Because it's not 16,000 for a scanner, it's 1,600 for a scanner. Okay. So if you pull that back out, then it's a lot less. It's like 14,000 less. So your risk is going to be 3222, 18,000 bucks. It's not a huge risk. So you're going to have to get, what's that?
Plus 2 employees.
Yeah, well, even the 2 employees, if you look at the next line up, see where it says 12 weeks of startup? That's my sensitivity. So if you have 3 months and you haven't got any rides and you're paying employees, you got to rethink the plan. Okay, so what's that risk? That risk is, on an annual basis would be 94,000, but for 12 weeks, it's 17,000. So you got some equipment for 16, some payroll for 17. So the question is, what's the likelihood you're going to lose 33,000 bucks? Okay, that's what a risk analysis is. The sensitivity is how big a risk is it? In this case, as Jordan said, it's absolutely accurate. We'd have to be blind, deaf, and dumb and not do anything at all worth its crap in order for this thing to fail. So let's talk through why. And it's fairly quick. Number one, all these calls are set up through Hitchcock. And Tom Perrin is the one that does it. He's the one that talked to me about it. And he also said that he would continue to work closely with us as we implement it. There are 7 companies that offer these services, 7 organizations that offer the services. They average at least 15 a week because they do 15 a day. Each service they're in a rotation. So if it's service 1, they're on a Monday, 2 would be Tuesday. And then it rolls and it keeps rolling forward. So what that means is if we were number 7, the day that 7 comes up, and it changes over time. So the day that 7 comes up, we get the first call. Okay, so that means we're guaranteed to get a call at least once a week. Okay. The second piece of it, though, is if the first call doesn't get responded to and nobody covers it, then they go down through the list again and keep going until they get the calls covered. He said that you're pretty much guaranteed that you're going to get somewhere between 7 and 15 calls a week. But he's saying to be safe, you assume 7 calls. Okay. Now, this is 20 hours that we're talking about. It's a half a week, basically. And I came up with what's the time? You know, how much time is it going to take to do the call? There are 3 levels that Jordan talked about. One was a local hospital transfer. So it goes from like APD to Hitchcock or something like that. And another one was a distant hospital. And the example, I think, was Spear Memorial going into Hitchcock. And then the third one was hospital to home. And then how it gets billed out as a loaded miles, one mileage. It's not the unloaded miles. So I put together something that's too complicated. You're not gonna have to deal with it, but they'll have a copy of it so that they can do whatever they want with it. But the key thing for me was, okay, if the total cost that you might want to flip around for this, you make that any bigger, Shane? Oh, I can make it bigger. I can if I have a,
Bottom right, you should be able to.
yeah, I gotta get down there. Okay. All right, so this stuff here is variable. And this stuff here is variable. What I'm showing is that our basic cost, which you can't see because it's decided to close up on you. For an annual basis, assuming this type of split on the routes, it's gonna cost us, including the mileage and fuel and all the rest, it's gonna cost us about $76,000. Great. Okay, so, and it comes up with some mediums, like I assume they're all advanced EMTs. But frankly, it could be an EMT, it could be an advanced EMT, it could be a paramedic. But I took the average of to come up with this cost. So I'm assuming that the average cost for us doing this 20-hour-a-week gig is $76,000. So what's likely to get for revenue? Well, this particular run is $108,000. That's a lot more than the 76. Just for the hell of it, what does that mean? It means we would do 3 weekly trips. And remember what I said, the parents said, minimum of 7, could be as many as 15. We would do 3. Based on that, as Jordan pointed out, it spins off a lot of cash. 3 would be 108,000, which is $32,000, I think, more than what we're spending with just 3 trips, this type of trip. So the next sensitivity is, well, what happens if he's wrong? What happens if we don't get this money over here? Those are the numbers that Jordan put in for what the fees would be from the service. This allows us to change those. Okay, so I'm only going to do 2 quick demonstrations. Down here is some examples of fees. These are the fees. This is coming from a private company doing this service, that was doing this service within the last year or so in our area. And this is from, can I mention where it's from? Windsor.
No,
Springfield, I'm sorry, Springfield. So they got Springfield's numbers here, they got a private company's numbers up here. As you can see, the public one is less money coming in. So what I did when I did the first run, I didn't have these numbers, and now I do, and again, Jordan got them, and I really appreciate that. So what I did was, I tried, what's the lowest number I can go to for these fees? You type,
No, you don't have your mouth on.
oh, crap, yep.
Mike, do you have a way to contact the Indeed guy?
Huh?
Do you have a way to contact the Indeed guy?
No, why is he on?
No, it's 6:14.
Oh, is it really?
So that's why I'm like, is there a way to call him?
No.
Okay.
That's a problem.
Yep.
Okay, how about if I just tell you, the other sheet, we got a problem going on a candidate. The other sheet, which instead of having 604, has the numbers of 425, 475. So if you took the public sector numbers, instead of getting paid 600 or 800, you only get paid 475. The result is you are covering all your costs. So even if you drop the rates by 50%, you're covering all your costs. Even if it was $200 a pull for the 3 pulls, you would not cover your costs. But if you went to the 7 pulls, at $200 a pop, you cover all your costs and you make another 20 or 30,000. So this analysis tells me there's plenty of room to make sure nothing happens. The worst that happens, you run it for 3 months and you fail, and then you get out of the business. But we aren't buying major new equipment, we're buying minor things to go in to help the service. And this was the original game plan 4 years ago, and it's still the game plan to go with. I supported it. I just wanted to make sure that the numbers were backed up, and they are backed up.
Is there a contract that we would be locked into it for a certain amount of service time? Or it's basically if they call and we tell them.
If they
look,
call,
we're out of
right, we
business.
either accept or we don't.
Okay,
But for no length of time.
Right.
right, okay.
15?
Of the 7 organizations doing it that are involved in the Upper Valley, or
Can you get on
any of them
the phone?
restricting not to do it on the weekends. I mean, that's what you said, right?
Right.
Is that what is a disadvantage in that
Yeah,
rotation? or-
there was less amount on the weekends. A lot of times Fridays are slammed and trying to get people moved before the weekends, because that's when the hospitality people come down and make sure that they get placed and they're off for the weekend. So Monday through Friday was the biggest.
Yep.
And is that the number? I did miss it. It's 7 other, there are 7 transport companies right now, 7 other companies.
Upper Valley, Windsor, Springfield, which is out of Vermont, Golden Cross,
Lancaster.
Lancaster, and New London. I don't even think they do that.
Yeah.
And then like, I think Lebanon only does like specific from hospital home kind of thing, or hospital hospital.
So the closest transport from Dartmouth would be, is Golden Cross out of Claremont?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep.
So
So
they're,
it benefits our area because,
Sure.
yeah, I see like Gold Cross out here quite often,
Right.
Windsor.
see them all the
Yeah,
time.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So we could be doing those calls, even though we're on a rotating basis.
Right.
Right?
it's
But
like a record.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The tow service, right?
Yeah.
AAA.
pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So you want approval to go ahead and implement
Yeah.
this?
What's the
Right.
ability of getting the, so you need an EMT and an office personnel is what you're looking for as well?
Technically, it would be a total of 3 with the office personnel for the 15. And then the 2 providers for the set days a week.
They have the money to bankroll the startup just by virtue of the balance in the account. And again, the risk for it is $30,000 total.
Well, but if you're hiring 3 people.
Yeah, but
you
if
know,
it doesn't
just hire
work,
and Get rid of them at 3 months and.
yeah, so the answer is you're at risk if you have a goal, and the goal is to break even within 3 months. You do that, your risk is diminished. If you don't break even, then you make a decision. The decision may be to continue, maybe to close. If you close, that's what your risk, and it's covered. So that's all I was trying to do, is to make sure that the startup risk was covered.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on the availability to hire the people that we?
I know of at least one person that was willing to do this if we kind of like reached out to see what the feels were. We have someone who's willing to do so, and that's at least one.
Good start.
Yeah,
Right.
we do have another person who would be willing to come in and volunteer their time to train. I don't know if that's something we can do in order to get themselves up. This person already backs me up for when I go on vacations and all of that, so the training really isn't necessary. It would just be the 15 to get us started.
So you're looking for a motion to approve?
The initiation of this business plan and
Right, because we still have some work to do.
I'm gonna have
So-
to.
the hires theoretically have to go through these guys.
Yeah.
And recommendation, don't hire one until you get
Right.
converts from at least 2.
Yeah, yeah,
Like setting a lot of stuff up with billing, that's like the big thing. Setting
Yeah.
our rates, get
The
the credit
actual
card thing.
Plan
going.
itself and everything is in
Yes.
place.
Just
Right.
little
Now, the-
pieces that I can't do anything until I get approval
Right.
to get the go ahead.
no,
I would first put a motion in that we accept the business plan that you presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Not right now. I think I pretty well understand where we're at.
Okay,
So,
all in favor?
all right.
All right, there you go.
Thank you guys for your efforts.
thanks.
Yeah, appreciate it. Please
Yep.
keep us up to date on how we're moving along.
Sounds
Yep.
good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a potential problem.
So we got a few things to go over here real quick. Is Louis here?
Why don't you wait till he comes in with a proposal of the
Okay, so
trucks?
truck repairs, we go over that.
Thank you, guys.
Water and sewer truck, which is what we were discussing
Same, I
earlier.
would leave it. I don't think,
Yeah, leave that alone for now.
Okay, we'll leave it, no problem.
Library trustees, are they
they
here?
just want to paint the conference room. They're putting a TV monitor
What,
in there.
what color?
I suggest a fuchsia, but they thought that might be a bit extreme.
Camo.
They were looking for an off-white.
In the conference room downstairs that we
Yeah.
use.
Yeah.
Today's world, an
That's
off-white is
currently yellow.
black.
Yeah.
Right.
That's currently yellow.
Yes, It'll be
Only if
light.
it includes batteries for the clock.
I second that.
I can do that. Do you want me to put batteries in the car?
It wouldn't hurt.
All right,
Block.
it's on my
That's
list.
why things move a little slow sometimes. The clock hasn't worked yet.
All right, so look, just, are we, everything else is an executive session, or not?
Do we have any other business? Online?
No, oh, I don't know. Is there anything else online?
No, there's nothing else.
So
All
the
right.
problem is we got an interviewee that was scheduled for
Is he on?
6:15.
He will be as soon as.
He will
hopefully
be in a
as it's
minute,
left.
but we also have people in the room. You've got two other issues. Sam is here for one issue.
Okay.
Can you wait,
I can
Sam?
wait.
Okay, so Sam waits.
I'll wait. till I-
And the other one is a carryover from previous meeting. So we got to deal with that one. So
Do we need a motion for the trustees? Right,
No, we just.
we just agreed. Go ahead.
Consensus.
Okay.
So I can get, what I'm getting at is, if we can get,
All right, so we need a motion to go into non-public.
Well, make a motion.
I will second the motion.